Does Valorant have a problem with
China?
No, not the same way that Donald Trump might have a problem with China, but let me just quickly explain what has been revealed recently by Leo Ferrier. So he said, thanks for all the players who showed up to their droves of support to support their favorite teams and players. In 2025, we're sharing a record-breaking $105.2 million with teams in the VCT. Excited to start opening up the sport next year and give more teams access to the pool. Now, this is an eye-watering amount of money. That averages out, by the way, to, just over $2 million per team. Now, of course, not all of those teams will be getting $2 million. Some will get significantly less, and some will get significantly more. And I think I have an idea about some of the teams who might be getting significantly more. But just quickly, let's just talk about this number and how big it is, because Leo actually shared the data from 2024 as well. So the total shared in 2024 was 78.4 million. Now, this year's digital goods alone is 86 million, up from 44.3 in 2024. So that is almost double the amount of sales in digital goods alone. And here's the thing, and you already know where this video is going. Where do you think most of those digital goods came from? Now, we don't have the exact data for this, right? It hasn't revealed, exactly, where all the money is coming from necessarily, but they did give us some clues, because Leo also tweeted this out to manage expectations. This was a uniquely strong year and will likely set the high watermark for some time. I.e., this year is going to be an outlier. Next year won't be as high as this year. And why might that be? What was so special about 2025, versus any other year? I mean, we had digital goods in 2024 as well for all of the teams. We had a champs bundle. It was mostly the same stuff. So what's going on? Well, 2025 saw the first year that the Chinese teams got their full bundle, right? Yes, we did have some Chinese, skins for 2024, but it wasn't a full bundle. It was just the skin. Whereas this year, the Chinese teams did get a full bundle. And I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that that was probably a large portion of these extra digital goods sales. Now, for those of you who don't know, we know that China has been absolutely popping off in Valorant for a little bit of time right now. In fact, during the Champs Grand Final in 2024, it broke a record of having 9.1 million peak viewers for that game. Now, it was then also revealed later on that of those 9.1 million viewers, 8 million of that or so came from China alone. Now, that does make some sense with the game that actually happened, because that game was EDG, obviously the biggest Chinese team, were in the grand final against Team Heretics. So, of course, that makes some sense why the Chinese viewership would be high. And it was also in a very good time zone in China as well, because it was in Korea. So, time zone-wise, it worked out. The team-wise, it worked out to have a lot of Chinese viewership. But even so, to have that big of a portion of the people watching that game be just from China is kind of crazy. And it's not just figures like that. There are multiple other stats that Riot have posted to kind of show us that China is absolutely popping off. For instance, this was from last year, talking about the peak concurrent viewers in each of the regions. So you got the numbers here. And you might notice that China, even though it's only year one of China, has an extra comma in it than everyone else, and is over 1 million higher than America's, which was, by far in second place for 2024 in terms of peak concurrent viewers. So that, again, gives you a little bit of a hint that the Chinese viewership is kind of just on a different level. And there are other hints as well, of course, like the fact that this year we know that Riot is running a road show for China. They're not just staying in one venue, they're going around China to different venues because they know that they can afford to do that, and that people will go there, and that it will sell out, and that that's just a way of making it even more exciting. There is absolutely no way they would do that with any of the other regions. There just is not the interest to do that, other than maybe just hosting, a couple games in some of the more popular areas, like for America's going to Brazil maybe, or for Pacific going to Japan. Outside of stuff like that, there is just not enough demand to go on a full roadshow like there is in China. And this, obviously, is actually positive news, right? The fact that so much money is getting shared around with the teams is a great thing, right? Obviously, that's a good thing for the sport. It makes Valorant look good in general as a good opportunity to invest. But I am a bit worried that if we looked under the hood and, Riot revealed exactly how much team made individually, I would be maybe a little bit concerned that, the big Chinese teams, your EDGs, your BLGs, maybe would be quite a lot higher than everyone else. And this might not be a problem necessarily in the short term, but over the longer term, it might start becoming a bit of an issue. Because, of course, if all of the money and all of the viewership is concentrated just in China, then eventually over time the Chinese league is going to become, more prestigious. There's going to be more people watching it. It's going to become better quality, all of that. And the top talented players will probably start flocking to China because they can probably afford to pay their players more because they're going to sell more bundles. They're going to get better sponsorship because so many people are watching it in China, etc., etc. And we already have some kind of rumors and hints that that might be the case even this year, right? Because it was rumored that JDG wanted to pay Aspas $1 million to go and play for them. And obviously, if those sorts of things are already potentially happening, then it won't be a surprise if that keeps happening on in the future. And the thing is, if you're a Chinese team, you already kind of know bringing in a very good import player into your team can work, because one of their most successful teams has been DRG, who of course have used that model from the very start of just having Vukashu on their team the whole time and him just being an outrageously good player for them. And he has, helped them make, champs last year, for instance, win Ascension to begin with in the first place. And so DRG, I think, are a good example for other Chinese teams that they probably might want to follow suit. Now, of course, there is a restriction on how bad this could get. Not every good player is going to go to China because there is, thankfully, a rule that states that you can only have one import player, right? Which hopefully should mitigate, the absolute travesty that this might have become otherwise in the long term for Valorant. So it isn't going to become some gigantic problem, but I would suspect that you shouldn't be surprised if, the very, very best players end up going to China. Because if a Chinese team can pay you, double the salary potentially, or even more of the salaries that you're, potentially getting offered elsewhere, then yeah, even though it is going to be, a big lifestyle change and you're going to have to move across the world and all that kind of stuff, well, if they're paying you more than double of what you might get elsewhere, probably most people are going to take that deal. And again, this is not going to become some catastrophe that completely destroys Valorant from the inside out, but it might bring a bit of a power shift in terms of where Valorant's resources are focused and stuff like that. Because if all of the money is in China and a significant amount of the viewership is in China, then of course that's going to lead to some kind of changes, and it is going to lead to maybe China being seen as kind of, the best league of the four of them. Right now, we're kind of blessed to be in a situation where, certainly between EMEA, Americas, and Pacific, there isn't too much in it, right? And China is maybe seen right now as being a little bit behind, but give it 5 years' time, would you not expect that to almost be flipped, where China is at the top of the game, and all of the other three regions are kind of looking up at China like, we wish we were as good as you. And so this is not necessarily a major issue, because it can only really get so bad thanks to the import rules. But I do think that there could be some other problems that come around with it, as so much of the wealth and power of the game kind of gets concentrated towards China.